Folks, it's Steve Sanchez, Jim Jones, another episode of Veterans in Politics. Today we have Shannon Churchwell. She's going to be discussing Black sanctuary cities. Should be a very interesting show because I need to know what she's talking about. Jim, you got anything?
Actually, no.
Are you kidding?
I really don't, because I actually, I don't want to take away from, because when you sent me the text of who was going to be on the show, I'm very interested in this subject. Yeah. So the only other thing I would say is that next week I'll get more into it, or next show. I'll get more into the whole PTSD thing and some of the issues I have with people saying that PTSD, which I don't get, but anyway. But okay. Yeah, no, that's it. I really don't have any rants. It's been a good week.
Yeah, I don't have any rants either. I just want to get right into Ms. Churchwell. Ms. Churchwell, how you doing today?
I'm doing fabulous. How are you?
I'm good.
How are you too?
Good.
Could you tell us about yourself, please?
Well, I'm by profession a nurse. I was born and raised in Philadelphia. I've been in
What type of nurse?
I usually do geriatrics, long-term care, stuff like that.
The elderly.
I love the elderly. I love the elderly.
Oh, okay.
And I love working with the elderly.
Okay. So I'll look you up when I, start getting there.
Okay.
Give you a call. Come take care of me.
I'll be right by your side.
Oh, you're so sweet. Please continue with your bio.
No, I was born and raised in Philadelphia. I've been living in Vegas for almost 10 years. Okay. And I just believe in serving my community and just being outspoken on things that I care about.
Okay. All right. Very cool. Tell us about Black sanctuary cities.
Well, in response to the current climate of racism in this country, and also in response to the United Nations response to the disparities in racism in this country.
What did the United Nations say?
The United Nations said that Black people under the technical term of refugee status could seek refugee status outside of the United States based on their findings of the racial terrorism, oppression. And they had met the United Nations Human Relations Council, actually met in June of last year to discuss this. Okay. And so what I'm asking for is federal land and funding to build like a reservation or a sanctuary. It's not the same, but similar to a Native American reservation in the fact that we will be independent, sovereign, and a micronation within the nation of the United States.
Why do you think we need something like that?
We need something like that because...
And keep in mind, we did have a Black president.
But no one has ever asked for a Black American reservation or a sovereign nation. It hasn't been done before. So, we have had a Black president, and you would think that he would be more sensitive to the issues that we face as Black Americans. But as we see, Black Americans are victims of political neglect. And that can happen even by a Democrat.
And what do you mean by that, political neglect?
Well, when you look at some of these major cities around the country, you will see the schools in Black communities are underfunded. The infrastructure is neglected.
And they have churches on every corner.
They have churches on every corner. Just the political needs of African Americans are not often met. And it can be, by a Democrat that you voted in office that perpetuates that neglect.
So this sanctuary city, is it supposed to protect someone from law enforcement if they did something? They broke the law over here, they go to the sanctuary city and they can't get arrested? And
not at all. The sanctuary city is a place for peace, for refuge. It allows the Black Americans who feel that they need to seek refuge, a place that they can go within the United States, but even though we would be our own separate independent government. And it would allow that Black person the opportunity to say, do I want to leave the United States altogether and apply for asylum in another country? Do I want to stay here in the United States? Just give them the opportunity to have some sort of refuge to figure out what they're going to do. I think that a lot of people don't understand that there are still a lot of hot pockets of racism and terrorism within the country, in southern states, as we see the police brutality. Black people in this country is affected by white supremacy in just about every public system in this country, from healthcare to the school system to the criminal justice system to policing to, as I said, political neglect, where they think it's okay to take funds from Black communities or Black schools or Black neighborhoods and divert them elsewhere. So, you know, this is something, we're under a state of oppression, and this, what I'm asking for is not in response to any reparations or slavery from 400 years ago. It's in response to what we actually are going through right now.
So basically what you're saying is that you want to create a Black country within the United States, which then they don't have to, Black people wouldn't have to abide by any of the laws that are currently on the books with the United States.
Well,
would they have their own currency as well?
The details would be worked out. Like I said, it would work similarly to the way a Native American reservation has rights in relation to the United States. Native American reservations are considered nations. They are considered sovereign and independent, but yet they do work with, in some level, with the federal government and or their state to some degree. I'm not saying the sanctuary is going to be some lawless place. That would defeat the purpose. You know, the purpose of the sanctuary is a place for peace, a place for refuge, for the persecution. For example, the young lady the teenager who actually filmed the George Floyd murder, she is seeking counseling right now because of the psychological trauma of what she witnessed. And so there are a lot of Black people in this country who are experiencing and witnessing racism, murders of their sons, and they need a place where they can go and just be like, you know, I need a place of refuge so I can figure out what I'm going to do.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's fair enough, but then, so what about if I started a group and said that I want my own area where only white people live and we are a sovereign nation?
Well, you know, white people have not been the targets of systemic racism. The United Nations isn't saying white people can seek refugee status. The United Nations isn't saying that white people, not saying if you're not experiencing something and you qualify for that,
right.
That's one thing.
Right.
But that's not what people in this country is recognizing, and people around the world is recognizing that you're being persecuted in your own country. There are many pockets in this country where if you're Black, you better not dare go.
Right.
And my family is originally from Oregon, and they know that all too well. There are places that you can't even think about going to if you're not white. So there are plenty of places for white people to go and be away from anyone else that they feel is oppressive to them because of their whiteness. But as Black people, we don't have that.
Okay. So if you were to walk down Las Vegas Boulevard, as a black person, you wouldn't be equally protected?
No.
Okay. So if I were to walk down the streets of Compton at 3 o'clock in the morning as a white person, I would be more protected than you walking down Las Vegas Boulevard. See what I'm getting at?
Probably. I mean, I've never been to Compton, but I'm assuming that you're saying that it's a black place. White people
I know damn well that I cannot walk down the streets of Compton.
Have you tried it?
At 2, 3 o'clock. I was told not to.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is I don't understand,
and why were you told not to?
Because of my black friends told me, yeah, that's not a good place for you to be. Because of the color of your skin.
It's not a good place for them to be as well.
Right, no, and I understand that. But I'm just saying your action...
but why is it not a good place for them to be as well? Because of political neglect of that area.
Right,
I grew up in Philadelphia. I've seen horrible neighborhoods that were black. When the universities or developers wanted that neighborhood, the city somehow figured out how to clean up the crime, clean up the streets, it was like a miracle.
So I guess...
And that's because the United States government thinks it's okay to oppress black people. It thinks it's okay.
And I'm not disagreeing with you on that. But what I'm saying is, how come now we're getting to a point where black people want to separate themselves from white people and think that they should have a sanctuary country?
I'm not asking for segregation. Segregation in this country meant we couldn't even come through the front door of a building. We couldn't drink off of a specific water fountain. We couldn't sit at a counter. We couldn't go up an elevator. We had to take the stairs.
Yeah, which is
We're
totally
not asking
ridiculous.
for that.
Right, okay.
I mean, that's totally ridiculous. So by no means are we asking to rewind the clock and be segregationists. What we're asking for is refuge for those who is like, I don't hate white people, but those of you that are racist, I don't want to keep being your victim. That's not saying I want to segregate. I want to be safe.
But
and
how
that's
do you
what the sanctuary city is for.
But how do you identify what white people are racist and which ones aren't?
By your actions.
Okay. Give me an example.
Kneeling on someone's neck for over 9 minutes.
Okay, well, first off,
pretending as though you were shooting a taser and you were shooting a gun.
Okay, well...
Taking the funding out of black schools and diverting it somewhere else.
Okay. Well, you're speaking about Greg Lloyd. When you talk
George
about...
Floyd, yeah.
Okay.
How many George Floyds are there across the country?
And I'm not going to disagree with you on that. Now... He didn't have the officer did not have his knee on his neck for 8 minutes. It was actually on his shoulder blade. They're taught to do. However, I do agree with you on this. Once an individual, black, white, any race, is taken into police custody, their well-being is now the responsibility of them, and they did not do that properly. Mm-hmm. So I do agree with you on that. Mm-hmm. But what I'm saying is that, like, if we're going to figure this whole thing out, there's a lot of moderates, a lot of moderate whites that, and Steve knows this about me, that I really enjoy communicating and being involved with all different races. And I really enjoy that. But what's ended up happening now is that we're getting to a tipping point to where it's almost like each race is like starting to fight each other again.
Well, you have the dominant majority, which is white, that just can't accept. There are people that are white that are in that tradition or mindset that cannot accept the diversity of this nation.
Well,
they just can't accept it. The only superior being I've ever known to walk this earth was Jesus Christ. And he certainly wasn't lynching people and killing people.
Right.
Okay? True. So, I mean, there's this white supremacist push in this country that they're dominant and everyone else is supposed to be servants and groveling on the bottom. We all deserve to live in peace and freedom. We all have contributed greatly to this country, and we are stronger for our diversity.
Oh, I agree.
And, to have people of a mindset that they are superior to others, and therefore I can kill you, therefore I can enslave you and subjugate you, that mindset is destructive to a diverse nation.
I agree.
So, and it sets a standard for people to think that they have to act like that in order to succeed. What this government made the mistake was tying prosperity to oppression. Whites back in the day prospered from oppressing black people and non-whites. So when you tie someone's wealth and prosperity to hurting someone else, that mindset is like, oh, I've got to be the savage. I've got to be the beast. I've got to oppress these people in order for me to prosper. And that mindset is transcended to today. And so you have people coming into this country that may develop that mindset. My people, I've got to fight for my people and our prosperity. And it just, the popular kid, quote unquote, is influencing the other kids to develop that mindset. We as black people have just been stigmatized in this country because of that mindset that has transcended generations.
I agree with everything you just said. Now, my next question is going to be, so now what makes your cause different? Because now basically, from what I'm getting, from what you're saying is now that you want
peace.
You want peace, but
sanctuary.
But what you're basically saying is that you want your own country, and you want now for black people to be superior over white people because
it has nothing. The only superior entity is God Himself. There is no human being that is superior. Create me a world out of thin air and all the creatures, and I would look at you like you're superior. There's no human being that's superior to any other human being. I'm not asking for you don't fight against, you don't become what you're fighting against. So if I'm fighting against white supremacy, I would do myself a disservice by becoming a black supremacist. You don't become what you're fighting against. Someone who's saying, I am traumatized by this police violence, I am sick of this neglect of my neighborhood, I am sick of being mistreated and oppressed as a black person, I seek refuge from this. I don't want to live my life being oppressed because of the color of my skin and texture of my hair. I seek refuge. That isn't saying I am superior. That is saying I seek refuge. I seek peace. I either am going to stay in this country and continue to fight, or I am going to seek asylum in another nation, or I am going to live on this reservation and continue to do the work that my ancestors and so many people have done to fight against this evil. It's evil to think you are superior to another human. You can think whatever you want. Right. I can't stop you from thinking what you want. You can think you're the Easter Bunny if you want. But when you take actions to hurt people because you believe you're the Easter Bunny, you can believe. I've grown up in Philadelphia around whites, people from it's an international city. I've known white people who are proud of their heritage, but being proud of their heritage doesn't mean they have to hate somebody else.
Make you better. Yep.
They're proud of their, I'm Irish, I'm Italian, I'm German. You know, they're proud of their white ancestry. But you being proud of yourself doesn't make you superior or make you have entitled to harm somebody else. And, you know, I'm not asking for any type of black superiority.
Well, you know, Italians really don't consider themselves white, especially the ones from Sicily.
Oh, okay.
But I wanted to you mentioned earlier that whites were superior in this country, and there was a statistic done that in about 30 years, the whites are not going to be superior in this country anymore. Especially, you have a lot of mixed races going on. So what would happen if a black man or a white woman, or a black man married a white woman, or a white woman married a black man? Would they be welcome in the sanctuary city as a married couple? If
Yes, because you have a lot of these. I just saw in the news that a black man had to withdraw his biracial child from school because her hair was cut off. The teacher and the student had cut her hair off. You know, it's a place for refuge. There are interracial couples that do need to seek refuge themselves because where they're living is not acceptable for them to even be together.
So, you know, Texas tried to become their own country, try to separate themselves from the Union. This was years ago. What makes you think that a black sanctuary city would hold water or gain any type of support if Texas can't even get away?
Well, we're not asking to peel off an entire state from this country. Like in Nevada,
would there be pockets in different states? Or
well,
how would
there
that
are
work?
pockets throughout this country already that are nations within this nation. The reservations, for example, they are considered nations, and they are peppered throughout this country.
Let me pause you on that one real quick. Reservations. Have you done any studies on reservations and how horrible most of those reservations
Not
look?
all of them are horrible. Some of them are functioning very well. And it is my desire that we don't replicate their mistakes and we look at what is working for them and what's not working from them and learn from them.
Okay. Well, how would you go about addressing the federal government and how you would get aid to these sanctuary cities / reservations?
I'm only asking for one, and the federal government, just like it does with the other reservations, they do provide funding, and they also offer, the reservations also have the opportunity to create their own economy and income.
Right.
You have some reservations that have solar energy generation stations, casinos, all kinds of things to generate income for the reservation.
Okay. So I'm just, now I'm fascinated in how this process would work though. Because it's like, just for an example, as far as reservations go, where I was actually originally born is Hot Springs, South Dakota, which is basically right next to Mount Rushmore, which is 60 miles away from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation from the Dakota Sioux. And that reservation is run down, and every time they petition the federal government, it's really hard for them to get resources in. So aren't you concerned about how, like, you're talking about systemic racism and that from the federal government, having your own reservation / sanctuary areas, aren't you concerned that would create even more because the federal government will ignore that just like they've ignored the Indians.
I think in the inception of it, like for example, the federal government owns about 81% of the land in Nevada. Let's say we were to get land in Nevada, it would be properly funded in the onset with the proper infrastructure. There are some Native American reservations, they don't have sewage, electricity. Right. We would have all of that. Floors. We would have all of that. I mean,
but how that you would have all planning. But where would that funding come from?
It would come from the government. I'm asking for land and funding.
How would you petition the government, though? The government's already Congress. Broke. So.
The government isn't broke. The government spends money on what it feels is important.
That is true. So how would you lobby the government to find that important?
Well, it starts with the Congress. I've already contacted my particular congressperson, which is Gina Titus. I've had an immediate response from her assistants, but I have not had any response from her.
What was the response?
The person that called me from the Vegas office, they wanted to know what was I really asking for, how would it look like, yeah. And once he had the understanding of what I was asking for, he patched it over to the DC office. They called me, and they were saying that, well, you know, you something like this hasn't been done before. I don't know, maybe you could just buy the land from the federal government, or, you know, a lot of, I don't know, maybe. And then I said that, you know, Catherine Cortez Masto is asking for 41,000 acres of land to expand the Paiute reservation, and she's asking for additional release of federal land here in Nevada so they can build housing and business development and all this. Because the person from the DC office was saying, well, if it was just a place where people can just come and maybe pray and sing, that's one thing. But you're talking about putting businesses there and housing there. And and you can't really put that type of stuff on federal land. And I said, well, Catherine Cortez Masto is asking to do that. You know, just because what I'm asking for is unique doesn't mean that it can't be done, because it's not totally unique. The federal government has given land and funding to Native American reservations. It's for different reasons, but it's not like it can't be done.
Wouldn't it be best to fix up the black communities? I mean, we do have a sit-in vice president that's black. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be best to take care of the black communities and try to generate funding to help with the infrastructure and the schools and bring businesses there?
Well, I mean, by no means am I saying that every black person is going to huddle into this one section of the country.
Yeah, you don't want to put them all there.
We need to continue. This is our country. We need to continue.
One press of the button, they can wipe them all out.
There are people who said that they would come visit for a few weeks out of the year just to get away. But we need to continue to fight from coast to coast, from the north to the south, and everywhere in the United States for equality. And so when you're talking about cleaning up black communities, that goes to the issue of neglect, and we do need to fight for that. Those communities don't have to be that way. Those communities are that way as a result of political neglect, because I've seen with my own eyes the way the machine works when they want to clean up those communities, when they want to reduce the crime, when they want to improve the outcomes of their school system and their graduation rates. So it's not like it can't be done. But because people are black in these neighborhoods, oh, it's okay to take the money away. It's okay to let the street crumble apart. It's okay to, and it's not okay. And we do need to fight about that. So you're right. We do need to continue to fight for equality and fair treatment in this country.
Well, Shannon, and I don't mean to interrupt Steve, but so basically, Steve, I guess what your question was is how can you improve Black communities, right? So basically,
by stopping the political neglect.
Okay, so basically, all I heard out of you was nothing about self-responsibility. It's just the government isn't doing their part. What's the community going to do?
By no means do I think that we should not do for self, and we have to do more for self than any other group because of the political neglect. But when you're a taxpayer and you go and you fight in every war that this nation has had, and you come back to this country and you're not getting proper funding in your schools, are we supposed to pave the roads and the streets? Are we supposed to fund the schools? Are we supposed to just pay for tutors to educate our kids because they're not getting good education in school?
Well, what about the city government, the city council?
The city government needs to do their job and stop the oppression and political neglect. I'm all for doing for self. But there's a certain responsibility that the government does have to its citizens.
So explain to me. So tell me, no, and I'm agreeing with you 100%. I'm trying to define for the viewers and listeners exactly what what your role is for the federal government. What do you want the federal, state, and local officials to provide to the community?
Fairness and equality, and stop neglecting.
That's a very broad spectrum.
You have a certain
education,
whatever is needed. If it's infrastructure, if it's funding for schools, just do your job. Don't think it's okay to not do your job.
But you're not defining their job, though.
Their job is defined by the state law. It defines what a council person does. It defines what a mayor does. It defines what a state legislator or a congressperson. The law, did not define that. That's defined by what the laws are for elected officials and their job description.
So basically, with all due respect, basically what you're saying is that you don't actually know what the role of government is. You're just saying they need to do more.
I know exactly what the role of government is.
But you haven't explained it. That's why I keep asking you.
What exactly do you want to know? What the role of government is?
Yeah. What do you want from the government? Do you want infrastructure? Do you want defense, education?
All of it.
So basically the federal government and government is responsible for everything.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Thank you.
The government is responsible for what the government is responsible for. They're not responsible to cut my steak in my kitchen and put the A1 sauce there and dip it and put it into my mouth. You're responsible for what you have declared your authority over me as a citizen is. So if you're going to do the infrastructure, if you're going to fund the public schools, if you're going to take my taxpayers' money, then I expect for you to live up to those standards. If you're going to say that people are protected under civil rights laws, then I expect you to enforce the laws that you create. So you can't neglect my school because it's black. You can't allow police officers that are the bad apples to get away with certain things. You can't do those things and still say, oh, I have authority over you. I'm supposed to follow your rules, but you're not enforcing your rules.
I agree with you 100%.
So that's what I want.
You mentioned earlier about racism. Wouldn't it be best to pass laws to make a lot of these hate groups a terrorist organization?
Yes.
Like the Aryan Nation and the Ku Klux Klan? Wouldn't that be?
Yes.
I'm not sold on the sanctuary cities. I'm more sold on all of us working together to make America stronger, to get rid of the racism.
I'm sold on that as well.
To have equal dollars for education and infrastructure and business throughout the country. And because I feel that if you get a sanctuary city, it breeds segregation, and in my mind, it's kind of like an apartheid, because a white person wouldn't be as welcome to come to a black sanctuary city, or they might not feel that they're welcome because it's a black sanctuary city. You understand what I'm saying?
By all means, I want us as a nation to grow up. You know, America has not grown up. It's still, I don't know if it's in a toddler phase or what.
It's
but
slow.
For a nation to be as diverse as ours, yes, we should classify racial terrorist groups or any type of hate group, be it Muslim or LGBTQ.
Right.
We should have zero tolerance for hate in a nation that is this diverse. Zero
Shouldn't
tolerance.
we focus our attention on that?
We shouldn't focus our attention on one thing. We should, if we're focusing our attention on one thing, is to make America better, to make America excellent. But there are many tentacles that have to stretch out in many different areas to make that happen. So classifying groups like the Klan or white nationalist groups as terroristic groups, that's a step. Passing the George Floyd and Policing Act is a step. Having a sanctuary for black people, that's a step as well. Because there are black people who have just, they can't take it anymore. They don't want to keep being oppressed because they're black. And they don't have the money to just pick up and move to another country. And, you know, and some of them, it's hard for them to leave America.
Each country have their own racial divide as well. They're dealing with their own racial divide in each country. England has it as well.
That's even more of a reason we should have a black American sanctuary.
There's some black countries.
Because on that place, there will be peace.
There's some black countries that are prejudiced against white people. I mean, so where is it that you're supposed to run? I feel that, you know, if you want to make this country great, we have to just keep on fighting. I mean, we're making a lot of strides. We're combating a lot of hurdles that 60 years ago was unheard of, you know. And I just think we just keep moving forward and doing that. But, you know, if you're going to create a black sanctuary city, I hear segregation, because that's how I feel.
Refuge.
But I'm hearing segregation. I think that we all should just like join and huddle to just, no matter what your skin color is, to make this country better than it was when we first, you know, was born into it before we leave. And we're doing that though. I mean. 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, you'll never heard of a black president of the United States, and we had one. We had one, and we currently have a black VP.
Yeah, but you're saying that tokenism and symbolism equals results, and that's not the truth.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying instead of segregating us, because that's exactly what a black sanctuary city would do. It's a form of segregation. You're thinking peace, love, and harmony. I'm hearing segregation, because you're separating it from the white people and the Asian people and the Indian people and the Hispanic people, because it's a black sanctuary. Then the Hispanic's going to want a Hispanic sanctuary city, and the Asians are going to want an Asian. And where does that leave us?
No other group in this country has been slaves and targets and stigmatized because of the color of their skin, like black people.
The Jews were enslaved for years because they're Jewish.
In America?
Not in America.
I'm talking about America.
But I'm just saying, if we want to get away from that, I think that we should all work together to make this country great.
We continue to work together, but in the meantime,
let me say one more
we
thing
don't have to continue to be victims. It's costing people's lives.
Because I'll forget, during World War II, this country rounded up all the Japanese nationalists and put them in a concentration camp. Remember that? If you go back in history, that's exactly what we did. When 9/11 happened, people were beaten up and and trying to beat up Muslims. Okay, when the COVID happened, that they went after the Asians. I mean, where do we stop? Where do we draw the line?
We need responsible leadership in this country that promotes zero tolerance for those types of things. You know,
we can't do that by segregating us even more, by creating our own little entity within an entity.
All black people are not going to pile into the sanctuary. You know, it's for those that need to get away. It's for those that want to seek refuge. No other race in this country, the United Nations is recognizing, have legal status to seek refugee status. You know, they're saying that about black people. So I think that the way I look at it is elected officials got us into this mess, and elected officials need to get us out of it. The ones that are here in office in today's modern time need to be stronger, need to have more positive zero tolerance messaging. They need to reflect that in their laws. They need to create better laws. They need to stop the neglect of African Americans in this country as far as when you see these disparities, address these disparities instead of allowing these disparities, because you can't fault a black person for saying, hey, I don't want to keep being victimized. I want to seek refuge. I want to seek sanctuary. I don't have to keep being a victim. You know, we all have a limited time on this earth. So those that want to continue to stay and fight and do that, that's great. Those who maybe need a respite from the fight, they need a place to go. You know, those who want to seek refuge in a sanctuary city and find another country. There are a lot of blacks that are going back that are saying they want to go to Ghana or wherever they may want to go. We don't have to continue to be victimized, and that there needs to be a choice where people can say, hey, I don't want to keep being a victim because I'm black. I don't want to keep being subjected to this. You know, we can say we should all live together in kumbaya, and that's great and that's perfect, and that is a hope that people can be able to live in freedom and peace. But, you know, freedom doesn't come without a fight. And some people are there, they just don't want to keep spending their life fighting, trying to justify their existence, trying to justify why they're dark-skinned with kinky hair. I mean, it is what it is. And to keep being persecuted because of that, not everybody wants to keep living like that.
Well, so basically, sorry, Steve, but now you got to get this out. So basically what you're saying is that we should give up.
I didn't say that.
We should get, no, but that's exactly what, see, words matter. And so, like, you just said, like, oh, we should all live in harmony, and that's all well and good, but that's, well...
I can't snap my finger and make that happen.
Right, exactly. So basically what you're saying is, like, but you actually, what you said was very poignant, because that should be the goal, and we should keep striving towards that goal. But now, what you're saying with your message is, like, that can't ever happen. Just stop. We just want our own little corner, and we're just all going to pull back because the U.S. is racist. That's never going to happen. All black people just retreat.
I've never said all black people should retreat.
But that's what you're saying, though, is you know where my sanctuary is? It's my home.
Well, look, was it Botham Jean's sanctuary?
Huh?
You don't even know who he is. The white police officer who walked in his house, thought it was her house, and killed him.
I heard about that.
Yeah, but I'm
was
just saying that,
was
like,
was Breonna Taylor's home her sanctuary?
Okay, well, stop. You're missing what I'm saying is, like, you painted
No,
out.
I'm seeing what you're saying. You're saying that we should continue to be victims.
No,
and there are some black people who are willing to keep fighting, and some black people are saying, wait a minute, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to keep justifying my blackness. I'm black.
Okay,
You even
cool.
have in society
So
where
now
they're
you're
passing
saying
the
it's
Crown
so-
Act
so
to
you
make
don't
it.
wanna make
In
progress.
today's society,
You're
they're
saying
still
you don't
trying to
wanna
pass
make progress.
I do want to make progress, but there are some black people who just need refuge. They don't want to keep fighting to justify their blackness than being oppressed because they're black. They just want to have peace. They don't want to spend the time that God gave them. We have a limited time on this earth. Who wants to spend their time keep being oppressed just because they were born a certain color?
You know how
And
you
the
do
people in this government have an obligation to create laws that will
asking for
stop
the
those
government
things.
to do
The
everything.
government got us in this mess. The government is the one that allowed us to be enslaved and stigmatized for blackness, or Jim Crow, segregation.
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
people
So
in
why-
government. So people
Right,
in
so
government
why should they
need
be the ones
the people
to
in
try to fix it.
because
they're the ones that
the
broke
government
it. Why should
created
they
the
fix
mess
it?
in the first place.
Well, then you fix
The
it.
government created the mess in the first place.
Okay.
The people that the population put into positions of power created this mess. And the people
no
that
black
we
people
are
voted for
putting,
them?
the people that we are putting in power need to fix this mess. Because I can't decree all people in the United States must get along. I'm a civilian.
Well, that was Martin Luther King's vision.
You know, I'm a civilian. Martin Luther King, he had a vision. He marched, he protested, he this, he that. It's the people that are in elected office that created the laws to change segregation, that gave voting rights. They have to participate in the process.
You know who my idol is? I have an idol. You know who my idol is?
I can't guess.
Mandela.
Okay.
And let me tell you why. Mandela fought against apartheid in South Africa. Okay? And one of the reasons why he fought so hard, and he was labeled a terrorist because he was starting to blow up buildings. And the reason why he started to blow up buildings is because the white soldiers for the South African government was shooting women and kids in the back. Okay? So they wanted to put him to death. But somehow he fought that, and he did what, 27, 29 years in prison, okay? And then he was pardoned. Normally, people would flee. They would leave. Oh, I don't want to do South Africa. I'm done. Had me in prison for 29 years. They got apartheid going on. I don't want nothing of that. That's not what he did. He stayed there, and he became president of the very same country that had apartheid and that put him in prison for all those decades. And that's what we need to do here. I was over here and I was silent as hell, let you talk. Didn't even try to control your tone, I just let you go, right?
Okay.
So we need to fight, and we just need to keep on fighting. And that's exactly what we need to do. That's exactly what we need to do. And the way you fight, you change laws. I mean, laws are being changed today. I mean, you ever heard of a white police officer indicted for murder charge for putting his knee on a black man that he was? You never heard of that before, but it's happened, and that's what we got to keep doing. You start doing black sanctuary cities and this and that. It's a form of segregation. You're trying to separate yourself from all other colors, and you have your own over here. That's segregation. No matter how you look at it, it's segregation, cut and dry.
Okay, black people don't have to keep being victims of white racism.
I'm not saying that.
Okay, now if we were to flood the northern border the way there are people coming up to our southern border, then because we want to leave, then what?
Hell, look at the Mexicans. They're trying to come in here in droves to this country.
Well,
Why is that?
Then let them come in here. Let them come in here.
Why is that?
Our ancestors built this country. We have been fighting for since the first slave was brought here. So it's not like this is some fight that just happened yesterday. This has been going on for hundreds of years. And it could continue to go on for hundreds more years.
Look.
And by no means should people give up fighting for human rights and equality.
And you know something?
But that doesn't mean that all black people wants to keep bowing down to racial oppression. Some people want to say, bye-bye, I don't want to deal with this anymore. And you can't blame them for that.
And women have been fighting for equal rights for years too, equal pay, voting rights, and all that's been going. I mean, this country has been evolving over and over and over and over.
The country needs to grow up. You know, and people need to really think about who they're putting in office, because you're either for us or against us. You can't be 1 foot in, 1 foot out, 1 foot in, and 1 foot out. You're for the people sometimes, you're not for the people sometimes. Because the reason we keep dealing with these issues is because we don't have strong enough leadership. And that's the responsibility of the masses.
Who'd you vote for?
The people that are in public office, the people that's in public office, they have the responsibility to reflect the needs and wants of the people.
Who'd you vote for president?
I'd rather not say.
There you go. I mean, Trump wanted to create, I think he did do it, criminal reform.
And that's beautiful.
To help everybody of color so they won't spend the rest of their lives in prison and change the way we do things and change the laws. Mm-hmm. I mean...
But it can't just be one president, because a lot of people are subjected to the state. Mm-hmm. So if he can do things on a federal level, but then you have these individual states.
You know how we fix these things?
Act.
Let me tell you how we fix these things. We educate ourselves on people that we elect to put in office.
Exactly.
That's how you fix it. I don't think that we do it by segregation or creating a sanctuary city for any color. You know,
I think that's a step.
I think we educate her. Well, I mean, how would you even do that? I mean, would you take a black neighborhood and say, okay, this is going to be our sanctuary, or would you take a vacant area with 40 acres,
vacant federal land, and get the funding and build that?
And you probably wouldn't even live to see it.
I've seen communities built in no time. I've seen communities built.
You know how many
it can happen.
For us to get a doggone commercial permit to change this house from residential to commercial, do you know the heartache and sweat it took us to do that?
You're one person in an individual
and this is just one house. You're talking about a whole community.
Well, if there's a will, there's a way, isn't there? Because the people that are responsible for the laws would provide us the means of being able to do that.
So I got one last question to ask you. So if this sanctuary is created, right? And thank you. I know we got and I love the back and forth. Actually, I've learned a lot today, so I appreciate you very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
But one of the things though that so we and I do agree with you on a lot more issues than you think. But if we were to create this, and we're talking about government and not doing enough, where my basis is coming from is because of somebody that did grow up so close to an Indian reservation. And I watched the lack of attention that area was given by the federal government. I'm just concerned that if we were to create this, then so we're talking about racism. What's not to stop now? The federal government right now has to control 50 states, 2 borders, okay, and infrastructure and transportation and all that stuff already. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, they do neglect a lot of areas, and I agree with you on that. So if you isolate a race into one area of the country.
I'm not asking for that.
Okay. So I'm just concerned that, like, they're not going to fund it, because now it's really easy for them to figure it out. Like, they're just going to go, okay, well, we'll create this, but then once we create it, we're not going to fund it.
There are Native American, I really feel for the Native American reservations who have not figured out a system to fund themselves, and the United States government is not fulfilling their obligations to fund them. And, you know, we send foreign aid to many countries around the world, and we need to learn how to take care of what's in our own front and backyard and living room. But the way it would be structured is the funding would be there, and we would also be able to create our own funding, the way some Native American reservations who are very prosperous have been able to manage things.
So basically you're talking about building a bunch of casinos.
Casinos, other businesses, anything that would allow the reservation to have revenue, like any other city or state would.
One of the things that I'm concerned
about.
And
another thing is, by no means am I saying that we should round up every black person and put them in one particular area. That I would never call for something like that.
Okay. One of the things that I'm concerned about, though, is that, to be just perfectly blunt, I'm just concerned that if that were to happen, that you would pull a lot of successful black business owners out of different areas of the country, and they would be in this sanctuary part of the country, right? And that would actually pull more leadership on a local level from other parts of the country.
Well, if you're a good business person and you have a thriving business in, say, a black community in Philadelphia, and you want to open up a business in the sanctuary, which I'm hoping a lot of the best and brightest minds of not just the United States, but around the world would want to contribute businesses and programs and different things to the sanctuary. So there's no law that says you have to have a business in one particular place. They could have business. Why not make more money by having more businesses?
You have anything else?
No, other than I was asking those questions about, like, and I wasn't trying to be a jerk about it. Oh. I was specifically asking what you thought the role of the federal government was for a specific reason. And here's the thing. I 100% agree with everything you said. Even though it doesn't sound like I do, I did. Because here's the thing. Now, you and I will disagree on this, but I do agree with you on this part. If the federal government is going to create cabinet level positions and say, hey, we're in control of education, transportation, housing, commerce, all these other things, if the federal government is going to make these promises, then they better damn well do it. And they're not doing it. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you on that. I just have a vision for a smaller role for the federal government and more local control. But that's what I was trying to get to when I was asking you what you thought the role of government was, is for that specific reason.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Churchwell, thank you so much for coming on the program. If you could look in the camera, you have the final word, and can say whatever you want to say, and a point of contact if you want people to join your cause.
Well, you can join the cause by reaching out to www.blackamericansanctuary.com. This is not about separation and segregation in the traditional sense that we've experienced in this country. This is about having a place of refuge and peace. This is about fighting from coast to coast to make sure that we all live in a free America where we are not judged by the color of our skin, but the content of our character and our actions. Please visit www.blackAmericanSanctuary.com.
Thank you. Folks, that's Shannon Churchwell was discussing Black Sanctuary Cities. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jones for Veterans in Politics. Until next time.